January, we started things well. We do our marketing, people is coming in and everything, but we have a few guys that we signed up in the last quarter of last year trying to quit. We have several, like 11, that, hey, we're reassessing our commitment. We are, we're going to see with the COVID, we're going to see if we can fit this in the schedule or not. And inevitably, what I'm understanding is they're not clear that they are in a contract. However, I wanted to see what would you advise me to how to handle that and policies with people. I mean,
I don't know if it's on my end or your end. Does everybody hear the static? Can you guys hear static?
Yeah, the audio is a little broken up, Sebastian. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, what I caught out of that, you have some people who want to quit and they're using COVID as an excuse.
Is that correct, Sebastian?
Is it me?
Yeah. Your audio is real staticky. I think your connection's weak.
Yeah. Plug it again. Is that better?
No, it's the same.
No, I've never did this before.
It's kind of weird. It's the audio is staticky. It's kind of like we're getting.
Try logging in from a different entrance.
Okay.
I'm gonna try a different device. I'm gonna just
Okay.
try again. Sorry about that.
And everybody, welcome Mike Weaver. Hi, Mike. Good to see you here.
Hello, Master Oliver. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Glad you made it on.
And David's with us today too. Good to see you, David.
Hi, David.
Yeah, hi, David.
How are you guys?
We're
good to see you, Sensei.
Good to see you too as well, sir.
Okay, so Sebastian, I don't know if Sebastian fixed that or not. Bruce, what's weather like in Fort Lauderdale, just to continue to harass us all?
It's freezing. I think it got down to 70 this morning, and it's just miserable cold. I put a little sweatshirt on, and I had to go down to the beach a little and jog just to try to stay warm. So, yeah, we're all suffering through this together, guys.
Yeah. Well, just wait till June, July, and August, and then we'll see how boastful you are. I spent enough time in Fort Lauderdale to know that for the good comes the bad. That's where Sal has it with Coronado, because they have good weather all year. Is that right, Bob?
That's what I heard, but I know in Florida you're absolutely correct. I don't know about Coronado though.
Yeah. Okay, Sal, are you back and on a better connection?
No, that was Sebastian, sir.
Oh, Sebastian, I'm sorry. Sal was harassing us about Coronado. Gotcha. Okay, Sebastian, try again. Now you're
you
muted.
have no audio. No audio, Sebastian.
I think what I got from Sebastian was he was saying that he had a bunch of people that signed up in December, and then they're basically saying something about COVID and wanted to possibly quit, and he wanted to see what you can do about it. I don't know if they didn't know about contracts or what it was, is what I interpret hearing.
Sebastian, is that accurate? He's still working on it. Yeah. Well, let's start with, because it's one of our talks today. Let's start with student retention. Is the Peter Drucker, who is a management theorist, one thing or another, one of the all-time greats. His line was, what gets measured gets done, or at least I think it was him. Maybe that was Deming. But one of the things that I see in almost all martial arts schools, and it reminds me, you guys remember that Tom Cruise movie, Days of Thunder? There was a great conversation in that movie that, race car drivers never wanted to go to the hospital because they didn't want to recognize their own mortality. But martial arts instructors are similar to that. Is, you line up class and people come in, they're telling you how great you are, one thing or another, and you want to think you're a great instructor, but you never want to really look at the numbers of people who are dropping out, and frankly don't want to call the people who've been gone 2 or 3 weeks because you're afraid that they don't love you anymore. And so retention is a real significant issue there, and the way that we're defining it in almost all cases, as far as retention rate or dropout rate, retention would be the number who stay, dropout would be, or inactive would be the number who are dropping out, is take your total active count for any given month and divide it into the total number of people who have been gone for a month, right? So I always use they're on week 5 to week 8, more or less. But if I was looking right now, I could go back to November, and I know how many people dropped out in November and how many my total active count was in November, and I could divide the number who dropped out into that number. And our rule of thumb is the definition of good is 2% or lower per month, right? So if I'm at 300 active and I'm losing 6 or 5 or 4 people a month, that would be really good as far as a benchmark, really good a retention rate. If I'm losing 3 or 4%, maybe even 5%, that's kind of, certainly below average for the industry, but the industry's horrible, but that's, pretty good. And then if I'm in the 6, 7%, 8, 9% range, that's when I start to really worry about it, right? And we have seen some schools who, in the last year, their dropout rate spiked a little bit, and then but mostly what I do is I talk to schools who, they think that they lost active count because of COVID, but what they did is they lost active count because they stopped marketing. And so when you look at your dropout rate, it's really important. And so one of the things that we've been having a lot of conversations in the last couple of weeks is, what was your active count on January 1, 2020? What's your active count on January 1, 2021? And then look at how many students you enrolled over that year. And, if I start at 300, I ended at 300, and I enrolled, let's pick a number, let's say 15 a month. So I enrolled 180 people. Well, literally, I dropped out, I enrolled 180 people, I dropped out 180 people. Now what I can do is I can say, well, every month I was dropping out 15 people. I had 300 active, and therefore I was losing 5% a month. That gives you a really good full year average. And in a year like this, it really is worth looking at and going back on a month by month basis. If it's true that you had a spike in March and April, let's say, or March, April, May, and then you got it under control, that hopefully that's an anomaly never to be revisited. So, you can give yourself a little bit of a break on that part. But what you really want to do is every month and every year, be looking at what that dropout rate is, look at what the trend rate is, but know what the difference between what a really good, the best I've ever seen was like 0.7% a month. In other words, to maintain 500 active, they only needed 3.5 new students a month. Now, that's such an outlier that I think it's difficult to say to anybody you could replicate it. But what you can replicate, what we've replicated over and over and over again, is getting to about 2% a month. So 500 active means you need 10 new students a month to stay even. 300 active means you need 6 new students to stay even. And when you go through the numbers, like here's some numbers I went through with a couple schools just this week. One of them started out the year at 256, ended the year at 200, enrolled 137 students, new students over the year. So every month they were dropping out 15.8, and every month they were adding 11.4. Well, that's not a good trend, right? So at what their dropout rate turned out to be is 7% a month. And if you want to consider it that way, their enrollment rate was more like 5% a month. So every month they were dropping 2%. That's a scary number. So
What
you
was
really
even
want,
scarier, Master Oliver, was that they didn't know that in
Yeah.
February and March. In other words, you shouldn't wait till the end of the year to know this. If I know that I'm losing more than I'm having coming in other words, my active count will be going down instead of going up, then I can jump on it right away, not wait till a whole year.
Or when we ask.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'll only figure out when we beat it out of you. That's the kind of the worst of all worlds, right? But again, when you take a look at one of the graphs that I always had, anytime I would step in and run one of my schools, is I always had a graph on the wall, and I required all my schools to do it. And this is, you could do it in Excel or whatever, I understand. But I always had a big physical piece of graph paper, a big, piece of poster board. And every week I would make them add what the 1 week inactive, 2 week inactive, 3 week inactive was. And then we would have a graph point for how many attended active this week, how many is our total active for the month, including the week, the weekly active plus the 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there was a line for every week, how many went into the 4 week inactive and how many we enrolled. And so right there, every week we're looking at, well, this week we had 3 go into 4 week inactive and we enrolled 5. We're not happy about the 3, but we're up 2. Or we had 5 go into the 4 week inactive and we had 1 enrollment and we got a crisis on our hands. And holding yourself accountable at that level where you're looking at the graph and you're seeing every week whether the active count is going up or down. And I plotted the weekly active and the monthly active, and then we would put like a pink highlighter between the two. And frankly, if those numbers were spreading apart, there was a problem. I wanted to keep the weekly and the monthly number as close as possible. That meant that the 1 week, 2 week, 3 week numbers were, weren't growing. And I always had a benchmark. If we were, 1 week inactive, I think we all know can spike. So the week of Christmas to New Year's, that might have been a week where if you're closed, obviously it's really going to spike. But even if you're open, there's going to be a lot of people who are out on trips or vacation, one thing or another. The week of July 4th is another example, is a week where that number can spike. And when it spikes on weeks like that, I don't particularly worry about it. But I get real stressed if the 2 week inactive number ever gets up, at 2% or above. And I get extremely stressed out if that 3% number is 1%, or that 3 week number is 1% a month. Because literally 1% in a 1 week dropout equates to 4.2% on a monthly basis. I want to keep it to 2% or less. Is that making sense for everyone?
And Master Oliver, so everybody's on the same wavelength. A dropout, we don't count them as a dropout until they've been gone for 4 weeks or more.
Yeah.
So, that way on a weekly, it's important to know how many missed that week, because you got to get them back in so they don't go into 2 week absent, and then try to get them back in before they go to 3 week absent. So you have 3 strikes at them, just like a baseball. 3 strikes and you're out. After they've missed 3 weeks, we know that they go to the 4th week, they're not going to be there. They're a dropout. We've got to still work on getting them back, but in our stats, we're going to count them as a dropout, and that's when we do our normal monthly attendance.
Yeah. Well, and again, especially it seems like MMA schools, because they start with the fallacy of trying to pretend they're a fitness center as opposed to really operating like a school. But you've got to know when somebody misses a single class for the week. You've got to know when they're on a fade out cycle, right? You're paying that close attention. And I talked to a lot of schools where the first time they know that they're gone is when their EFT didn't clear. Well, that's, if they haven't attended class for 3 months and now their payment goes bad and you want to figure out how to fix their payment, you're asking the wrong question. right? The right question is how do I catch them when their interest is fading, get them back on a high, do a little progress update, do a little private lesson, and get them re-engaged. And then, Sebastian, is your audio better? You are muted.
Yeah, unmute there. There you go. There's no sound coming out.
Try again.
Turn your volume up.
But his volume's not going to help. He needs his mic isn't working, and maybe that was the problem. But I think your question was, and as Sal reiterated, was you enrolled some people in November, December, and now in January they want to drop out. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Well,
Can I address that?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Point on that? And thank you for bringing that up, Sebastian, because I'm going to tell you, that's one of the biggest points that people forget. It's not, if you want to grow your school to 300 plus, you've got to pay just as much attention to the people you have and work so hard to get to keep them, as well as getting new students coming in. And if you're not on top of it, now I'm going to tell you, what you noticed was that what I call the tip of the iceberg. I had a couple people who said they wanted to quit. Well, guess what? A couple people say they want to quit. Well, there's been another dozen or more who did quit who never told you. So that's why it's so critical to know your attendance. That's why we have the class attendance card, to know what 2 days they're scheduled. So the first class they've missed, they get a call, a text, and an email from you, so they don't become a dropout. And we make sure that as part of the renewal process, part of prepping them for the renewal is to make sure that we keep extra attention until we get them renewed. We're going to follow them every class and keep them like a microscope so they don't become that student who loses interest. And I'll tell you, when they lose interest is when you quit giving them attention, when you quit spotlighting them in the class, when you quit patting them on the back, when you quit getting them engaged in earning stripes and medals at the graduation and all those kind of things.
Well, and to be fair, people who have been out, let's say they got distracted and they were gone December 15th and they came back on January 7th and tell you they want to quit. I mean, a lot of those are just, they got out of the habit, right? And then getting them back into the habit and the activity. The COVID deal is interesting because, frankly, well, you're going to be teaching classes on Zoom, you're teaching classes in the park, you're teaching classes, or maybe not here this week, but you're teaching social distance, limited classes or not. It's all about getting them engaged, prepping them for the testing, keeping them on cycle, all of that kind of thing. The question of, somebody wants to quit and they don't realize they're on a 12-month contract. To me, that's always the last issue, not the first issue, right? The issue is about goal setting, about engagement. It's about relationship, and it's about them really wanting to follow through. Now, as a last resort, I can always say, well, you did commit for a year. But frankly, now I'm in a kind of a combative mode rather than in a developmental mode, right? What I want them to do is I want to figure out how do I keep them engaged, keep them going. Our Jeff and I's mutual friend, Nick Okinas, his line was prophylactics versus therapeutics. And, what he meant by that is it's easier to keep them from losing interest than it is to get them back in once they've lost interest, right? So we really want to focus on that.
And this
Sebastian, if you get your mic to work, feel free to jump back in, but.
Yeah, and this is a tough time.
Can you hear me?
You
I'm
are
trying
going
Can you hear
to.
me?
Say it again?
We can hear you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I know, I agree with you. I think I should have my scope, the microscope is not sharp enough, Master Smith. I know what you're talking about. These people is really what they need. I think is more attention. And that's gonna my try it out, but it's nobody. I just wanted to hear your opinion at that point. So you just kind of see if I can go above and beyond with all the guys, and get everybody committed, and that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Now, were
Someone
these
in a
people?
contract that we don't want people that doesn't want to be here anyways.
Well, yeah, I would be careful about saying it that way, and especially when your staff hears you talk that way. What it does is it gives them a good excuse for letting people drop out, right? I want to have everybody that we want as an instructor to want to be here, right? And as an instructor, there's the issue is always, locus of control. It's whose responsibility is it to keep them engaged and excited? Is it my responsibility, or is it the student's responsibility? I always put 100% of the blame on my instructor. It's your responsibility to keep them engaged. It's your responsibility to build relationship. It's your responsibility to make sure that that they're engaged and on top of things. Because as soon as you let a staff member say, "Well, they just didn't want to be here. We don't want anybody who doesn't want to be here." Well, that's a perfect ongoing excuse that never ends for failure in that mode.
Yeah, they'll always say that for every damn thing.
Yeah, anybody who drops out, they just didn't want to be here. I had
Okay, we'll get that out of vocabulary then.
yeah, years ago, I took like 15, 20 people to Steve LaValle's school in Syracuse. And I came back, and my guy who was like my least capable of the group, I walked into the school where he was the instructor one time, and there was notes on some of the cards that said HINNEE. I said, "What is that?" Heine. Well, what is Heine? Hey, I'm not excited enough. And LaValle had this thing of, the people who are fading out, they would, they'd call them Heinies, which I'm not sure is a good or bad thing. But what they meant, the trigger was, we got to go on massive service and, do progress checks and one thing or another. My guy took that away of anybody he wasn't making progress with. He just called him a Heine, and he used that as an excuse not to worry about him anymore and write him off. So you got to be really, really careful about that kind of stuff. Whether it's fair or not, all of your staff have to be in 100%, personal responsibility mode.
If they don't want to be there, it's our fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would mark the card with in pencil with the little asterisk is all. And when the instructor saw the cards, because they would each keep, even if we divided the class into two, each instructor would have the cards of all the people they're working with, because it has information on it. How many stripes they had, how many classes they've had, are they up to speed, are they behind? So we can talk to them during the class. If they had an asterisk on there, that means that we had to spotlight them today. We had to make sure that we got by and gave them some positive words of encouragement, and talk about goal setting to the students constantly. Because why is it hard for everybody to become a black belt? Because people don't know how to stick with their goals. You've already got them to set their goal. You got them enrolled. If you renewed them, then you got them committed a goal to black belt. Well, now it's your responsibility to help to be their mentor, to make sure that you can keep them on track by keeping good communication between the student and yourself. I always told my instructors, know your students, know who the motivated ones are, know which ones need that extra attention. You've heard the expression, the squeaky wheel gets all the oil. Well, that means that the students that need the most attention, you're going to have to give them that attention to keep them engaged and moving. So we've got to constantly remind the instructors that it's their job, it's their responsibility to motivate, to inspire the students. And that's where our verbiage comes in. That's where the signage around your school comes in. That's where the stripes come in for the character worksheets to make sure they're engaged, because I'll tell you, the ones that lose interest aren't the ones that have a lot of stripes on their belt 99% of the time.
Yeah, well, and it's a lot of the I didn't hear the answer, Sebastian. Were these like new students, or were they more established students, or what was the makeup?
Honestly, a little bit of both. We had one black belt that it was committed to third degree instructor certification. I have two brown belts, a family, and then a couple white belts. I would say about 5 white belts that we sign up with the back to school. And after we closed December back online, we haven't re-engaged them. Even though we had great conversations, we did have parent-teacher conferences with pretty much everybody. But that was the key word, Master Smith, pretty much everybody, not quite everybody. And that's what I was telling you. I think we can lighten up that laser.
Remember, we can't keep everybody. That's why 2% or 3% is going to be the norm. That's why it's going to be important to get new students. But we want to make sure if they are losing interest or not wanting to continue, it's not because we didn't give them the extra attention.
Right, and that's where our retention was at 2% until this week. We just kind of got hammered with all this, so it kind of caught us off guard.
Well, it's typical January. We always took January as the re-engagement month. Not only do we want to get a lot of marketing going, but our goal is to go back through all of our dropouts for the year and re-engage them, try to get them back in. And we would usually be at least a third to 50% of these people that dropped out, we could get them back re-engaged. One of the ways in the pandemic that I suggest is that we tell them that it's been a crazy time. We remember the goals and the progress they made. We would love to see them back in. We're going to give you, and what was the word you used, Master Oliver, when you weren't going to charge them for all the back classes that they missed?
Oh, amnesty.
Amnesty, that we were going to give them amnesty, and they could just start by picking up from where they left off on their payments and then just continue their program from that point forward. And that's how you re-engage them.
Well, the brown and black belts is a different issue, I think, than the white belts, right? People who are relatively new. People who are relatively new, usually what it is you just didn't get them started off smooth. Didn't, enrollment folder, stripes, all of that kind of stuff. And then really get them in the renewal prep cycle and get them committed to train to black belt and beyond, right? Is people get easily discouraged if they don't have long-term goals. If I've really set the goal and I believe it, that I'm going to be a black belt someday, and 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and I'm on that track, or as a parent, I see that for my 7-year-old, well, couple little blips here and there doesn't mean that big a deal, right? But if we're just coming into class and because it's kind of fun and we're, punching, kicking, yelling, one thing or another, and then all of a sudden you have to go to Zoom and we can't get organized on that, or we're off to the grandma's for the holidays and all of that kind of stuff, then it's really easy to go, well, yeah, that was kind of fun, but let's do something else now. So with the new students, I think that tends to be the deal, right? So, and with this COVID craziness, so if you have to go from if they're coming in person, and then you have to go back where it's only Zoom as the option, or Zoom in the park if it's warm enough to do that, and certainly in San Diego and Florida you could. But if you have to shift, it's super important to really communicate with each of, especially the new students, and get them to make that shift quickly, right? Ms. Jones, I'm sure you know it, but the threat level or whatever the hell they're calling it, has changed. And we're going to have to go on pure Zoom for the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to make sure you knew that Joey's class at 6:15 on Tuesday is now going to be at this link. It's always has been, but we're not going to be able to do in person. We'll have to shift to that. Wanted to make sure you guys had, your setup all good and everything for that. And then text them, text them that morning, text them 10, 15 minutes before class starts, email it out to them, all that kind of stuff, right? That's one of the things, just broadcast texting everybody who's going to be in any particular class to remind them of the link is I think really useful. Because it's a lot different psychologically between I got to go get in the car, I got 20 minutes before class, I got to leave 30 minutes so we have time to change. That whole routine is a lot different than set up the laptop and we're going to do our class on the video. So you've got to make sure you get them engaged and get them following up on that. With the brown black belt, Sebastian, what was the issue with them?
Honestly, we did not receive much feedback. We got 2 emails saying that, school activities, middle school activities had taken priority.
Yeah, well, that's typical. And what that means is they were getting bored and they weren't really feeling like they were making, a lot of progress. And then other things came up and they got distracted, right? And how long have they actually, are you responding to this based upon they missed a class, or are you responding to it based upon they've been gone a while and they finally emailed you, said, cancel my contract?
We have, with the black belt, we had not had much contact in the past couple of weeks. But with the brown belts, they have been consistently in class. And they're great students. However, we don't have much of a relationship with the parents. And I think that's really where the mistake is.
Yeah.
The parents don't really see as much as what's going on. And we have been trying, we started in December with the parent-teacher conference to kind of begin to build this rapport and relationship deeper with parents. But we haven't gotten cut to everybody yet. And the one they haven't, that's usually what we see now.
Yeah. Well, again, when you lose touch with that personal relationship, which is admittedly even harder when you're doing it by video conference versus they're showing it up to class, and maybe harder is the wrong word. It is different, right? You've got to make sure you have a lot of touch points, and that you're calling and talking to them on the phone, or you're taking them into a breakout room, and you've really got to make sure they get engaged. So, because if I have my full class schedule in person and somebody misses a week, we're probably going to notice. But if I have my full schedule on Zoom and I don't notice that they missed a class, didn't get engaged, missed a week, and get on top of it right there, it's really easy to let that fade out.
And Master Oliver, I would tell everybody to, just like your brown and black belts, sometimes, they've been there so long, you tend to not pay as much attention to them. That's why everybody's ID card, that's why we use that 3-card box system for attendance, where we have box 1 and box 2, and then in the office box 3. And we're able to, with those boxes, we're able to see, because the card says what 2 days they're coming, we can find out on a daily basis who wasn't here today. And I tell you, just doing that and contacting them and prepping them to make sure, see, we tried to teach our new students that if you're not going to be able to make a class, give us a call so we can schedule a makeup class. Now it gets them in the mode that you don't have to call them when they're not there. They're going to call you when they're not going to be there. But what we found that was the most important with new students coming in, with the new students especially, because they haven't gotten in the habit of making their schedule work around their karate schedule yet, I would be sending them automated reminders. Just like you guys get a reminder for our meeting today, you should be sending them a reminder that their class is tomorrow at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever it is. So they have a reminder and a link if they want to go in on the Zoom, or they know that they can, come into the school because that's their scheduled time. So keep that in mind, that these automated systems that we utilize, if you're having trouble in white belts, I would go in and treat these white belts like intros. You know, when we do intros, we always send them a reminder. We call them, we text them, we email them to make sure they're going to be there for that class or for that second class till we get them enrolled. And then sometimes you guys just throw them over the fence and forget about them until you're ready to renew them. And if they're not there, you don't renew them. So you've got to do, like Master Oliver's talk about, prevention versus cure. It's easier to prevent the dropout than to solve it. We prevent it by, one, making sure we know when they miss a class, we're right on them. They get a text or a call from us. Number two, we send them a reminder to make sure that they know that the class is going to be tomorrow at this time. And they go, oh yeah, I forgot that is tomorrow. So it helps stay on track. And then number three, make sure that we're spotlighting them. We're giving them some positive encouragement when they come in the class, that all of my staff is all joined in on making sure when they walk by and they give somebody, we call it a touch on the shoulder, even before pandemic. And now it's just using your verbiage when you walk by or say something to them. So make sure that, you know, you're preventing the dropout, not just always trying to cure it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to do the attendance cards, or if you're not using them, make sure that you go on our quick start and look at the cards. Go to Facebook. We've had quite a few posts about the finer details of the attendance cards and the box systems and all that. If you have trouble locating any of that, just post a question in Facebook and we'll put the whole thing up there for you if need be.
Hey, can I offer something for?
Go right ahead.
If I'm doing this right, one of the things that I've done in the past, if that happens to me when someone is wavering, is calling them up and setting up a time to meet and talk and find out what the problem is, let them know I have their best interest at heart, and offering a couple of private lessons. And at the same time, I say, I know that you have an agreement and you agreed to be here for the 12 months, but let's do a couple of you know, private 30-minute intros and see if I could respark their interest. But I don't do it. I try to do that in person so I could talk with them and not just on the fly or not just on the phone, but set a time for them to come in and then re-get their interest going and then be able to highlight them in classes once they get started again. A lot of times I'm really able to get them right back in and realize that I have been neglecting somebody or my staff was.
Excellent. I mean, that is what we're talking about, the re-engagement. See, you're giving them that personal, that's why the pandemic is hard, because the one thing that students miss is that personal touch, that personal attention. That's why it's harder to do virtually online, but you can do it by spotlighting and by calling them out, but it always works better. You're right, Ken, face-to-face. You know, if you can get them in the class, never let anybody drop out over the phone, never let anybody drop out online, sending you a text, you know, set up a meeting. We always handle everything, even during the pandemic, face-to-face. And worst case scenario, it's at least a face-to-face on a Zoom meeting with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm able to then address specific issues that they might have if they're trying to focus on school, how this will help them with school and how this will help them with whatever issues they're dealing with.
You bet. You bet.
You've got
Well,
to
and
be a problem solver.
you both kind of addressed it, but you know, one is I don't want to have conversations by email. I don't want to have conversations by text message. Email and text message is fine for sending them a link for the class that's going to happen at 7 o'clock on Zoom. And it's good for a broadcast of sending out calendars and stuff like that. But it's not good for having any kind of significant conversation. You know, you don't do progress checks by email. You don't have, you know, try to save a relationship by email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, if somebody emails you, I never have any conversation with a student by email other than, I can respond back. I mean, now with Schedule Once, I could say, let's set a time to get together face to face. I have some time tomorrow or the next day. In fact, here's my appointment count if you just want to put it on my schedule, and let's sit down to school and solve that. And frankly, if you have somebody freaked out about, the pandemic, then just, schedule them for a Zoom meeting. But I'd always rather it be one-on-one, as Master Smith just said. But I see, and it's human nature, I guess, to get sucked into a conversation by text or get sucked into a conversation by email. And there's no contact there. There's no relationship there. There's no emotional support there. I mean, none of those things exist in that method of communication. It would be like if somebody sat down and they printed out a letter and put a stamp on it and mailed it to you, and then you mailed them a letter back. It's very impersonal. So, your response to any kind of email like that is, yeah, absolutely. Let's schedule a time, to sit down at the school and we'll chat about that. And, Billy has a class on Thursday. Why don't, when you come in for Billy's class on Thursday, let's chat, or let's schedule a time for a little private progress update with him. Here's some times available. Always schedule them to meet with you personally. And again, I mean, if you can't be in the school, if you're in that situation, schedule it on Zoom, but always, always, always in person. And you're absolutely right, Ken, is oftentimes all it takes is you get the kid back with a child and with an adult. All it takes is get them back in uniform and get them moving and get them excited again. Go ahead, Ken.
And I specifically mentioned to them also, just to point out, that even though they are committed and they made that commitment for the 12-month period in the contract, I want to kind of reiterate that in their mind and go, oh, so that they say, okay, well, let me really do these two. So in their mind, I'm thinking they're saying, let me do these two free lessons so I get out of the contract that I'm in. But I want to also kind of point out the contract or the agreement.
That personal attention is so important, because most people aren't going to ask you that. They're not going to say, well, could you give him a couple private lessons so he can get caught back up and get remotivated? No, they're just going to say, he lost his interest. We want to drop out. But when you do get them re-engaged, and I do call that putting out fires. But we want to get into the mode that only you can prevent fires. Don't get into always having to put out the fires. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning when I said, keep track of your attendance, know who wasn't here this week. So you're not having to put out fires. You're preventing those fires because you're getting to them right after they miss 1 or 2 classes, not after they missed a month or 2 months, or they missed the payment. And then I try to contact them. So do the prevention work, guys, because that's how you get your retention. Most martial arts schools have such a lousy retention because they never track it and keep abreast of it. They don't have an attendance tracking system to know when a student misses class. So if you don't have that, don't expect to have a good dropout, a good retention rate, because it takes some tracking system, which we found that the physical card was one of the absolute best and the easiest to do, because everybody had it where you could physically touch it and look at it, and everybody can look at it. You don't have to go to a computer and pull up 200 names to find them. You've got them right there alphabetized right in your card box system, right there at the front when they come in. So if you don't have a card attendance system, I'm going to tell you right away, I know you're never going to get below 6 or 7% retention. You have a physical card system, and then that still is not going to keep you better than 6 or 7% unless you're actually looking at them and calling them and paying attention to them. Guys, you got to earn their business. Don't just expect it because they signed the paperwork and you're going to threaten them to try to get them to make that payment. You have to create the environment that they want to stay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and with the ID cards, just to finish up on that topic a little bit, you have the A side and B side, or 1 and 2. So they all start on the left side, and then pull their cards, turn them in, and if you know on when you're doing people who are on Zoom, I do the same thing. Have somebody pull them out of the card box, and you're gonna mark them and one thing or another, just like they're physically in class, because they are physically in class, but just like they're there in person. But the idea is then on Tuesday night, I can look at it, and I can look at everybody who normally comes Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday, or something like that. And I know, here's 10 people who missed their first class of the week. So now on Wednesday, I can call them all. And, Ms. Jones, I noticed that Billy missed his class on Monday, wanted to look at a time when he can make it up so he still gets his 2 classes in this week so he doesn't fall behind. But you want to be that much on top of it. You want to know when they miss their first class. And so many people are trying to replace this with software, but I've just never seen that work or work as well. Master Moody created a huge software package years ago. I created a huge software package. Ours was designed to print out at every class everyone who was scheduled for the 615 class who wasn't in the 615 class, so that the receptionist could call them and see if they were on their way, and if not, never happened. One is it was garbage in, garbage out. The software was never up to date with their correct lesson attendance. Number 2 is it just never happened. But what did happen is I could pull the cards from Monday and Tuesday, see who missed a class. Then I could call them on Wednesday or Tuesday night and schedule a makeup. Then I could go through on Wednesday, Thursday, and anybody who missed a class, I could call them. And then at the end of the week, I know everybody who missed for the full week. And then I'm working on getting them back in before they fall into week 2. And what I'm always trying to do is avoid them ending up in the 1 week inactive file. And then once they're in the 1 week inactive, I'm stressed out and worried about getting them back in. But there's always got to be notes. I mean, we always had lots of Post-it notes where, visiting grandma will be back on the 14th. We could put them in a tickler file. So we call them up, call them on the 14th, 15th to make sure they get their class on the 17th or whatever it might be. Preferably ahead of time, we said, well, you're going to be 4 lessons behind. So why don't we try to do 3 lessons for a couple of weeks before you leave, and 3 lessons for a couple of weeks when you get back, so you're on track for your testing cycle. See, it's being that much on top of it. My friend Will Mayer, who owned a school for years in Columbia, Maryland, some of you may know him, but he had the lowest retention rate at the time, and this is years ago. But he had just great retention, weird curriculum, but great retention. And I was at his school one time, and they had those big whiteboards. You can get the whiteboards that are really like for splash guards and stuff, and the rest. He had an entire wall with that. And at the time, he had 800 students, and every one of the 800 students was listed up on the whiteboard. And there was a number up there of how many classes they had, how many they needed to the test, and then a number on how far ahead or behind they were for the testing. And every class, the instructor, they were organized by rank. Every instructor, every class, the instructor would go through every one of them with the students. Billy, you're a couple classes ahead. Good work. High five. Susie, you're a little behind. We need to do a couple makeup classes. Let's schedule that. Gotta tell you, it's a lot easier on the ID cards than it is on whiteboards. But every class, they were going through that with everyone, and to make sure nobody fell behind, because them falling just a little bit behind gets them discouraged. Them falling behind on a test, and if you've done a good job, they have a bunch of friends in class. If suddenly everybody moves into another class ahead of them, that gets them discouraged, right? So just keeping them up to date and keeping them focused and helping with those goals is very, very important. And then noticing when they miss a class, not noticing when the EFT goes bad. And we've got a couple of questions here in the chat room. I've got to remind everybody, I never pay attention to that. Bob, I think, was paying attention. But if you guys have a question, just go ahead and ask. Just jump in here.
Yeah, Sal had one, and then we also had one from Kim Sapketo.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Quick question. So I've been trying to increase everybody's tuition to $247, and we've had a couple parents that basically wanted to put in their 30-day cancellation, and they wanted to do what we were doing before, which was $9.95 for 6 months, twice a week. And so the parent was like, hey, we love what you're doing and all that stuff. I understand why you're trying to do this with your business. But basically, this is what we can do. And so, part of me says, go ahead, that's $1,000 that we wouldn't ever have, especially the situation that we're in right now versus, I feel like, it's like a skin, the old snake skin falling off, and here's some new skin. So I wanted to know if I should keep this student and say, sure, for another 6 months, do your $9.95. And, that's the bulk of it.
Well, the first part of the question, should you keep the student? Yes. And number two, should you create a separate system for anybody who gives you a little pushback? No. The pushback from going from $9.95 to paying monthly is going to be about commitment and follow through, right? The pushback about going from what's essentially $165 a month to $247 a month is, if you're raising price without having a new higher level of service that they're expecting, then it just doesn't make sense to people.
Yeah,
right?
and part of that was another challenge was, hey, they wanted to just maintain the 30 minutes, and the thing that we wanted to do to include Zoom, they were like, hey, we're not gonna take advantage of that. So
You're going to have to explain that to me a little bit more.
well, we were saying, hey, before they were just doing twice a week at 30 minutes twice a week. And we, with the new pricing plans, we were doing twice a week, and we were adding online Zoom included with that, which we never did before. So they can do both, ideally.
Yeah, if I was a parent, I wouldn't see that as an advantage.
Okay. So
30 minutes, adults or kids?
kids, Tiny Tigers, 3 to 6, 7 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah. See, here's a couple pieces of that question, right? Is you're trying to go from one system to a completely different system, which we don't want to lose anybody over that.
Right.
But the way that we do it is we go from they're on a trial enrollment or they're on this every 6 months to we really set goals and commit to black belt, and then they're renewed to black belt or they're renewed into leadership, right? And I rarely find much of a problem with that. Now, when I say much of, we'll get 75% of them to move into the new higher price thing, into the new program, and you'll get 20%, 25% who won't. And then that's got to be okay, right? What I'm not going to do, and this is answering your question directly, I'm not going to plant my feet and say, no, you can't do what you used to be doing for right now, right? What I am going to be doing is taking them all and really setting goals, taking a long-term outlook, trying to move them all into black belt or into leadership. And the black belt and the leadership are going to have a higher level of service than the old deal, right? But right now, I'm a parent of a 12-year-old, and if you say to me your 12-year-old gets to do more classes on Zoom, I'm suffering through, 7th grade on Zoom, and it's an absolute freaking disaster. I wouldn't see, and then we'll add this stuff. I wouldn't see that as a benefit. I see it more as a fallback when you're just not able to teach them in person, right? Now, on an ongoing basis, that doesn't mean when the pandemic is over and people are over the scars of this thing. That can be from here on in. It's a benefit. We're going to do the classes live and we're going to do them on Zoom. And if you're unable to fight traffic or if you're running a little bit late, you can just plug in, from home. See, that would be a benefit.
Or on vacation.
On vacation, exactly.
So then do we just add an extra class? I don't know what other benefit to give them.
Yeah, that's a much more a long conversation, but here's where you start. Is you start with goal setting.
Yeah.
and go all the way back to, because you don't want people thinking in terms of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a decision about this every 6 months,
Right.
right? You want it to be, where everybody here is that they're, it's a black belt school, their goal is to get to black belt, and then the goal is to get to second degree. And you really start with goal setting and focus on that. And that's the foundation. For right now though, Sal, I would remember there's a big difference between the next new person that comes in the door and what you can charge them, and all of the existing student body and what you can do with them, right?
Yes.
For the existing student body, you've got to more or less present, we're going to grandfather you in and let you keep doing what you've been doing, or we have this new exciting thing that you can move up to, right?
That's where the folder comes in. You got to get them that folder. You got to get them the character worksheets. They got to buy into that character development part of the program. And that is part of their journey on the way to black belt. But we get them habited to it at the basic program. So the parents want to see that habit continue on. And so they want them to be on a black belt. We got to get them on the mindset that's why when I say black belt verbiage in the class, when I say signage around the school, this is all getting them that enrollment folder, having the goal of when they're going to be a black belt. That's the kind of commitment. If your basic students that you have now, the old ones, don't have one of those enrollment folders and they aren't doing it, then they're not going to be, when you start talking to about black belt, they're going to say, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Well, even in our system, we have everybody start on a basic program, but they don't continue on a basic program for 4 years. They are in that first year to see if this is something they want to do, if they want to be a black belt. And sometime during that first year, we're going to show them how to qualify for that black belt. We're not going to let them come tell us when they want to be a black belt. We're going to show them how they can qualify for black belt training, because that's the real benefit of the program. Just like going to college, being a freshman doesn't do anything for you, but if you get a degree, that is going to help you. That is going to have a goal for you, an accomplishment of something that you can benefit for many years. Just like getting a black belt in our school, you'll be able to benefit for many years. So if they never got that enrollment folder, it's hard to get them going that way. They've got to buy into that whole black belt school system. And you got to start re-educating. And I will tell you, it's harder to reframe the old students than it is to pre-frame the new ones coming in. And every new member that we have says the same thing. Wow, I don't have any problem with all my new people coming in. It's all my old people that I'm trying to reprogram that is harder. And the longer they've been with you, the harder it is to reprogram. You think it'd be the other way around, right? Yeah. So that's why when you try to upgrade them and get them to buy into that black belt system, that's why we talk about that grandfather system. Okay, they've been on a different price point than everybody else. So, okay, they're either going to have the price or the commitment. Okay, you make that commitment to black belt, then I'm going to give you this price, which is not as much as everybody else because you've been with me. But I want to see you get that black belt. I want you to. Now, we've got to make sure they've seen the benefit in our program. If their kid hasn't been engaged and doing all those good things at home, the self-discipline, the reading, the healthy eating, the job list, if they haven't been doing all of that at home, then they haven't really bought into the program yet. They haven't engaged. We've got to let them see them get engaged. And then when they come to the graduation, they get those medals and the parents are impressed with how many kids are getting medals. That means all these kids have been doing all that stuff at home. I've never seen a program like this that could get kids to do things around the house without being asked. See, these are the things that you have to, it takes a little more reframing. Constant black belt verbiage in the class.
Well, and to correct one thing I heard you say, Master Smith, is we're not charging them less for committing on a longer term. And in fact, at the higher levels, it's more per month, right? So I heard you say that, but it's not the way we'll
In
structure
other
it.
words, I wasn't going to charge them what I'm charging all the new people because
Right,
they've been with me. We're going to give them a better price that is going to be fair to them because they've been with us. So that's what I mean about grandfathering.
Right,
You know,
right.
it takes sometimes up to the first 6 months, a year to get everybody reprogrammed and reframed and be ready for that. That's why for our new members coming in, we kind of tell you, don't mess with your existing students. Let's just focus on getting 100 new students because they'll be in at the right price point. They'll be the ones that'll be easy to renew. And when you start renewing all them, your other people will join in.
Yeah,
And that was going to be my question.
no, they were the ones that were just, their agreement was over, so they needed to renew.
Yeah,
That wasn't the question. The question is, what level are they at? How long have they been in the school?
Yeah, they've been in with us for like 3 months, like literally.
Oh, so they're brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And they came in at the old price point though, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's why.
well,
They didn't get an enrollment folder. They didn't go through that whole process.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
we're re-educating them now.
And we
Well,
call that reframing.
well, but the other issue is you're basically trying to get them to go from 165 a month to 247
Yes.
without a good reason for doing it. Right? It would be much easier to just flip it over to, you did $995 for 6 months. From now on, we just do, a year. So it's 165 a month. And just flip them over into that at more or less the same price point. That would be easier. And then when you get the renewal process in place, then you renew them to black belt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even mention a year. I just say it's 165, whatever. And then when they agree to that, then paperwork just says a year, and they probably won't even say anything.
Right.
I wouldn't even mention a year. I just say it's the price, whatever. And they say, okay. And then, you want to use the same account, and then, yeah, fine. And then when they sign the paperwork, it's going to say a year, and they're going to sign it. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Let them know you're giving them a special because they've been with you. The price did go up, but we're going to grandfather you in because that was the price you came in. So I'm going to go ahead and let you continue on with your training on what you started with.
I think that the anchor in, Master Oliver, that you're saying is, if price is different, whether it's for renewal or for whatever, there should be a valid reason and a compelling reason. And when we do address the term, which should be after we deal with price, there should be a reason, because it's this long to get to second degree black belt, or this long to get to this, well, why is it 40? Why is it 60 months? Well, it's this long to get there. There's a reason for those things. It's not just, yeah, we raised the price because our rent went up or whatever. That nobody gives a crap about your rent.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody gives a crap.
Or that some business guy talked you into raising your rates.
Yeah. Or we've been here this long and we haven't raised our rates for this long and blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about any of that at all. Or
Yeah.
I was too stupid to have the rates this low, whatever. Yeah. I mean, none of that matters.
For me, basically. What's in it for me for the raise?
Yeah. We're going to give you a great, you get a loyalty scholarship or a white belt scholarship, or that's the terminology.
Yeah. And somebody had a question about the Zoom classes or virtual classes as well. No?
It was Kim's Hapkido, Candace.
Melissa, did you have something?
I do. I would love some input, and maybe this is very specific to our particular situation. And if there's a better format for addressing it, I respect that. But we do have the opportunity in Washington now to have 5-person classes, in person rather, in the dojo. We've been online the whole time, whatever. But the point, and we're going to continue that, we're planning to do simulcasting of the classes as we do it. Here's the bump we're kind of running into. We get 5 per class. So for example, you know, we'll have a our beginner class, 5 of those. The trick I'm having is how do we figure out, like, do we offer this to the people who are online, which doesn't help us increase the enrollment with the literally 50 or more students we have on hold that want to re-enroll as soon as we're in person. But we can't guarantee that any particular person's going to get a spot in a, you know, where they have into the class in person. So anyway, we're kind of going around and around and hoping you'll have some ideas about that.
Yeah, well, in other words, you have a whole bunch of students who have basically planted their feet and refused to do Zoom classes, but have said they'll come back when you have in-person classes.
Yeah, in fact, like they just want us to start billing them and they will be there. They don't even care. They just like, if we can be in person, start billing us.
Well, when you're limited to 5 in a time, right? You have no choice, but everything's by appointment. And then when the appointment is full, it's full. And there's a bunch of tools you can use. We've been using Schedule once, which I like, but there's you know, there are a bunch of others. There's Calendary, and there's, I don't remember all the other ones. But I would definitely start at the top of that list and just make appointments for them to do in-person classes. And you're absolutely right. I would start with them first. And then once you have gotten through all of them and they've demurred, because a lot of them aren't really coming back. And of course you do the same thing you would try to do anyway. But you know, you go through and schedule all of them, and then you make the link available for people to schedule if they want to come to an in-person class in addition to the Zoom classes.
And I would also do make sure that if you're limited to only 5 people in a class, you know, with everybody kind of being, you know, homebound, so to speak, and not be at school for you know, 6 or 8 hours a day, I would have more classes. I would have afternoon classes. You know, I would run a full schedule because you know, with all the vaccines going out now, that should be just a few months before they go from 5 to 10, and then maybe they'll go to 15. And so it's not like you're going to have to do this all the time. But
he is in a city that's trying to kill off all small businesses.
Say it again.
Yeah, that does appear to be the goal.
Yeah, but just add more classes and get that going is going to be very important, I think, for you. And I think that would be your biggest go-to right now.
Has anyone laid off a really awesome instructor that wants to come to Mercer Island, a beautiful place in Seattle, and teach with us? Anyone have an instructor laying around that's awesome?
The catcher there is, and come to Seattle.
Yeah, exactly.
Seattle's pretty nice.
Beautiful place.
Seattle's beautiful. Mercer Island is really beautiful.
Yeah, under normal circumstances.
I would add one comment to
it's beautiful right now. It's just from a business standpoint. They've got a business unfriendly administration.
Well, that's what I mean. Nobody wants to go there now because of all of their lockdowns and shutdowns and the crazy government stuff.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add one thing. I would think the process of you can have people in the school is the hook to get them to talk to you. But the conversation needs to be, now I'm talking to you, and what do you want to get out of this for your kid or for yourself? And then that's the conversation, and that's what needs to be emphasized. Because usually the failure, and not to give you too hard a time here, but the failure in the process was they said, oh, we don't want to do Zoom, blah, 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 and they left. And the failure was not to emphasize what Master Oliver talked about in the prior whole conversation about retention, was what they're really supposed to be trying to get out of doing classes with us, what they're trying to get out of martial arts, which is whatever the things are, you know, if they're an adult, maybe losing weight or getting in shape, if they're a kid, all the other things that we talk about, and making that a big enough deal so that when the time comes, they maybe cases spike and you can't have classes, maybe they can't make the Zoom appointment. They don't get their one of those 5 slots at the scheduled time they can make, maybe whatever, or maybe they're on vacation. You know, that the point of this is supposed to be that they get the value thing that they want. So therefore, if big deal, they're at doing Zoom classes, that's not a big deal. So the emphasis needs to be that, and that goes for everybody here. You know, if they're going to do Zoom classes, but if you really want to get this thing do you really want these things for your kid? If it's a kid conversation, then okay, well then, you do the class on Zoom. Or if, maybe they got COVID in their family, so nobody can come into the school because of contact tracing. Therefore, you do class on Zoom. So I would really emphasize that. And that might have solved the other problem you had where they got more wigged out about coming in. I think that's why we ended up with this excuse of Zoom fatigue, blah, 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 which is actually a real thing, but mostly for people that work on, Zoom all the time, which is mostly not the situation that you're talking about. For physical activities on Zoom, staring at the computer like I do all day long, Master Oliver does all day long.
Well, from a parent standpoint, I'm so annoyed with our public schools that I can't see straight, and would probably yank him in a heartbeat if mom had the same views I do. I do think parents are aggravated and irritated with the way that the school processes have been treated. And I gotta tell you, from an attendance standpoint, I've been sitting there looking at my son's shoulder while he's logged into Zoom class, and then I get the call, the automated call that he missed the class that I was watching him log into the Zoom. And the other thing, which I hope none of us do, is his teachers, if class started and it's 5 minutes or 10 minutes after class started and they're not there, they lock them out, which means also if they get booted off the connection, they can't log back in. So they just seem to be, again, like your, city and state government trying to flush the kids out rather than support them, is my view.
Yeah, but if the
I think there is an element of that. Because we do, and I think we could have done better, like you're saying, Master Moody, is doing better. We could have done better earlier on, potentially with things. Absolutely, we have since then. Like, for example, Graham is an instructor, one of our instructors, and he has been in contact with all of these people regularly, having conversations. How's it going? How's Joey? How's things? Well, good to see you, or, happy birthday. We've been staying in contact. So we've been trying to do that. I think in some regards, and maybe this is my bias, perhaps I have Zoom fatigue for real. I mean, I don't question that they're sick of it. I know they're sick of it. They want nothing to do with it. They're doing 6 hours a day of Zoom since March with school. And so our parents are like literally in tears going, I can't ask him to do this. I can't ask my kid to do another hour to 4 hours a week online. As soon as you're ready, knowing full well that they,
do 4 hours online, you're asking them to do a couple. And if it's important if it's important for them to learn the things that you provide, which are completely different from school, if those things are important, if you believe martial arts is important, this is the way I would term it to an instructor. So if you work for me, what I'd say, if what we do is important, martial arts is important, if we believe that's important, and that's why we're in the business, if what we do is important, then I would expect them to do the other 2 hours a week. Yes. If learning XYZ, whatever we had done when we talked to the parent, if them learning discipline, if that was the thing that they wanted to learn, if those things in real operational terms is so that the kid had success when they're an adult and they were a disciplined person when they were adult, and that meant something to the parent. If that's important to you, if those things are important to you, then yes, I know, I understand all those things and I do sympathize, because I'd prefer you guys be here in person. But if those things are important to you, then I want you to be here twice a week on Zoom.
You know what else? It's not, Melissa, it's not that they don't want to do another hour of Zoom. They don't want to do another hour of school on Zoom, but they'll do another hour of karate, martial arts. What do the kids do when they're not in
Yeah.
school? They're on the online. They're playing video games, and they're doing the surfing the web, and they're doing all that. So it's not like they don't want to be on their computer.
And I don't mean to represent this as a question, really, because I get all that and I respect it, and I'm trying to get my head around it. I also have a particular, it doesn't matter, it'll sound like excuses, but these aren't people that hesitate about what they decide. But in any case, what I don't know how to do is, how do I enroll these new people into the into the in-person, while I'm not offering that to the people who are currently online with me? Does that make sense?
Well, all these people you have on hold, right? They're the ones that are important to get back in. And then I do agree with the way that Master Moody phrased it, is once you get them back in and you get them attending regularly, it's then easier for them to come to in person once a week, come on Zoom once a week, and they get back in the habit, right?
Right.
So that really is the more important thing, is to get those people back engaged, since the others seem to be doing okay on Zoom right now, right? And then the question is, if I enroll new white belts and let them come in person versus I have white belts that are coming on Zoom, how do I justify that? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's
well, I guess mainly that there's this much of the there's 5 spaces, and maybe I'm not seeing this right. But
well, from that I understand.
But there's 5 spaces, and I want to offer them to, if I give them to people who've been waiting for in person. What about that gal who's in online right now who also wants in person? That's where I want to.
I would call all the people who are waiting and book appointments for them. And once you've done all of that and they've said yes or no, and you've booked them, then you can say, we have very limited online classes. Here's an appointment link. Don't be shocked if there aren't any times available, not our fault, and feel free to go ahead and book classes, right? Nobody's going to be shocked. I mean, if you said to me, there's 250 students and we have 30 classes a week, we're allowed 5 each, and it's first come, first served, I wouldn't be shocked that there weren't times. I mean, a lot of the things we normally do over Christmas were like that. We, it's like, oh, well, it's booked for 2 months. Can't get in. But I would definitely prioritize the ones that you've put on hold that just said they aren't going to do Zoom classes. Because frankly, once you get them back in, if it shuts down again, they're more likely to stay this time. You're more likely to be able to say, we've got you booked for these times. But again, we have all these other classes are on Zoom. You're welcome to mix and match, however you want. You're more likely to get them re-engaged.
I would have enough classes that you could handle all those, but I would have it where they come, like Master Moody or Master Oliver, I forgot which one said, they come once for a live class and then once for a online class. That way they can reinforce what they're learning online when they come in, and they could always do a Saturday if they're too tied up during the week, and a Saturday online, and then the rest of the week they could sneak in one. And I would add enough classes so I could get everybody in there at least once a week live with classes of 5.
Well,
I would not make it complicated. No. There's classes, they sign up and schedule once. Whoever gets there first gets there. What I agree with Master Oliver, though, the ones that you're trying to hook back in, I might schedule them on their own first and call them up to get them a slot first, so you hook them back in. I might get them, manually priority at first when you're starting this out. But they've got slots, first come, first serve. the way you can set schedule once is they can only do it a couple days in advance or something. So, you know, the ones that are motivated, they'll get on there first. The only thing I want to make sure you do is make sure that everybody's about their goals and what they're really trying to accomplish. So you don't get a bunch of whiners that said, well, you said I could do it in person and now there's no slots available. So I want to stop paying you.
No, get this waiting list that you've accumulated back in first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's your highest priority. And then book them with standing appointments. And once you've done that, I mean, if you have any slots left, then you open it up to everybody. You say, we have a few, you know, it's by appointment, first come, first served, right? But even if you did that and they were all 100% booked, people aren't going to be surprised. They know what's going on.
Well, an easy way to do that though, Master Oliver, she could just give the link to those people. You could just give the link to schedule your slots to those people once you get the standing appointment set. Then from there, after a few weeks of doing that, then they could schedule their own slots.
Yeah.
Yeah, except she's got to get this 50, as many as possible, re-engaged as first highest priority. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That would be
Okay.
Get them re-engaged first.
Get slots first.
And if I could just say one more thing to Sal, I did notice on your post, Sal, that you did say you had no problem with the new people coming in, signing up, paying the higher prices. So really stay focused on keeping those enrollments going, because remember, we got to get 100 new students. And if you've got 100 new students at the 247 or the 200 price as a minimum, then you've got 20 to 25,000 extra coming into the school. And as we tell everybody, there's no problem you're going to have that an extra 20,000 to 25,000 isn't going to solve. And those other things with the pre-existing students, those will handle in time. Only address it when they expire. You got to do something with them, but you're going to grandfather them anyway. So you've got that solved too. Okay.
Yeah. Any last thing before we call it a day? I mean, the overriding theme is it's way easier to cut your dropout rate in half than it is to double your marketing activity. And both of them are important, but really focus in on, let's get down to 1 or 2% a month dropout rate forever. And then what we know is, you know, once you get to the point where is your target, maybe it's 300, maybe it's 500, whatever it might be. But you've got to know what your maintenance level is, how many new people you need per month to do that. And really the top schools I see, you know, they can get to say 500 active, and then they know they only need, 15, 20, well, what would it be? 2% of 5 to 10. I only need 10 new people a month to stay even. And that's a real easy to maintain pace there. What you don't want to be is like, you know, my friend Dave Cover, they used to call it feeding the beast. You know, and have this school where you need 50 new students a month to stay even. I mean, that's like being a hamster on a wheel, and you're just the faster you run, the faster you get nowhere.
Don't think you need 500 students. $1 million school is a 300 student school with an average student value of 300. And if you have them paying anywhere from 200 to 250 on a basic, and anywhere from 350 to 400 on a renewal to black belt, then you're going to average in that 250 to 300, like Rachel down in Middleburg, Florida, which is a small town. It's not like one of the major cities in Florida. It's a very low income even area. What did y'all do in December, Rachel? Unmute there. There you go.
157,000 was our December, which was our biggest month ever.
Now, did y'all hear that? In 1 month, in December, which is usually the hardest month for everybody, they did $157,000. And how many students do you have, Rachel, that you were able to generate 157? What is your active count now?
326.
You see what I'm saying? $1 million. Now, $1 million school is only about 84,000. They did 157. Now, granted, last December, what did you do last December? 140, was it? if I remember.
Yes, sir. We did no, it was actually 133. And at that time, that was our biggest month ever.
And see, guys, and they did it with, they probably didn't even have 325 then. So your magic number is not try to fill in 500 students, fill 300, but just like Sal, who's got the new people coming in at no problem at the 247. Now, when he recycles these and now he's got 300 paying 247, now it's a completely different story because these people will be renewing. So he'll be able to average at least 300 student value down the road. So keep getting those 100 new students, focus on your marketing. Let's get these intros and enrollments in. Wow, and get past this pandemic.
Yeah, and just as a final thought from a parent standpoint, I don't view what's going on here as it's like for the kids, it's not Zoom fatigue. It's incompetence on the school system in the way that they're handling remote learning. That's a big difference, right? So, you know, I wouldn't have any issue at all. I mean, because hell, he's going to be in his room playing video games anyway. I don't have any issue at all of him doing a physical class, you know, on Zoom. Where I'm annoyed is they're just incompetence in handling the whole thing, right? Combined with, I mean, you know, kids, especially elementary age kids, they don't have any problems with this thing anyway. So, you know, the way it's been dealt with has been insane.
And I don't even let them compare the two because one is sitting at a desk for 6 hours. The other one is getting up, moving and exercising and keeping them to make up for that. They need that every time they're on 6 hours of sitting, watching a class from academically. They need an hour of exercise. So this is what they need to rejuvenate and to keep them motivated.
Well, from an anecdotal thing, I can tell you that parents being annoyed with the remote learning situation is about the incompetence of the educators. It's not about the technology.
Right.
So I don't think that's a barrier to doing this effectively in any way, shape, or form.
One last thing, Sal.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to thank Master Lappin and you guys. I just wanted to give you guys some great kudos. I recently upgraded my price to $9.95 for the highest membership as an enrollment fee, and basically $247, basically $500 a month. And I actually got like 3 people to do that already, and a couple of them wanted to do instructor training for $2,400. So I was like, yay! So I want to thank you guys for doing that, and we're starting off on the right foot on the new year.
Great.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
Sal, one way that people double their revenue, literally without working any harder, is they get better at presenting value, and then they get the average value per student to double, right? The other way they double their revenue, literally without having to work much harder, I mean, you have to pay attention, is by dropping your dropout rate. And so there's just some systematic things you need to do to go from 7% to 5% to 2% dropout rate. And there's just some presentational structure, most of it between your ears, that you need to develop in order to get the tuition way up with people. But cutting the dropout rate in half literally doubles everything without having to work much harder. Doubling the price literally doubles the gross, but both of those things have a massive multiplier on the net. Because again, a school doing $30,000 a month is way less profitable than a school doing $80,000 a month in almost all cases, because the rent is fixed, the utilities are fixed, the phone bill's fixed, everything else. So there's just a ton of cash flow that leverages up.
30.
Yeah. On that note, we'll call it a day. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend if we don't talk beforehand.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, guys, have a good day.